Welcome back. A recent AARP survey has shed light on the unpreparedness of a majority of older adults when it comes to handling disasters. Many of them lack the necessary measures to ensure they receive critical information during such emergencies. Joining us to tell us more is the Executive Director of Older Adults Technology Services from AARP, Tom Kamber. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, to start off, the recent AARP survey highlighted that less than one-third of those surveyed have created a comprehensive emergency plan for natural disasters. Why do you think there's a lack of preparedness among older adults?
Well, we really have a challenge here that's partly related to age and partly related to technology. So, a lot of older individuals are more socially isolated or have less communications resources than some of their younger neighbors may have. And so, in many cases, older people are a bit disconnected and need to make those plans more intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, we have technology, which is still a challenge for many older people who are still learning some of the new emerging technology tools. So we kind of have a two-part program that we have to solve, both getting older people a little bit more prepared than they might otherwise have been, and also making sure they have access to technology resources to use in case of an emergency.
Yeah, of course. And when it comes to these emergency plans, what are the key elements that people should be including?
Well, the first thing to do is simply get started in making a plan. No plan is ever going to be perfect, but since only one-third of older people have really made any significant plans to get prepared, the first thing is to just get people activated. So we've created a website with AARP. It's at aarp.org/disaster prep, and we created a quiz there that can help people assess themselves in terms of how prepared they are. The quiz is super easy. It's actually kind of fun to fill out. It takes just a few minutes, and it'll get you started so that you've already made some first steps toward being prepared for a disaster. That's the first thing to really do, is take some kind of action and start to think about what kinds of resources you should put together.
And so the survey also mentioned that just 1 in 10 older adults have embraced modern tools like disaster related apps, like we just talked about, and text notifications from official national disaster resource agencies. So, how can these tools significantly enhance preparedness?
Well, I've been teaching technology classes to older adults for almost 20 years, and I can tell you that these new resources from FEMA and the Red Cross and these apps that are available are absolutely fantastic. They provide up to date emergency information. You can customize the information so that it comes to you in the format and with the relevant context that's best for you in your community. And so our feeling is the apps are really the first place to start for many people. They're also free and they're trustworthy with these resources from FEMA and the Red Cross. So the first step may be, if you go to that AARP site that I mentioned, get connected to the FEMA site, get connected to the Red Cross site, and begin adopting them. Even if you're not yourself all that tech savvy, most of these can be filled out just by a person who's really a beginner with the technology. But if you need help, get a relative or a caregiver to come and give you some support as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And a lot of times we choose to opt out of these certain resources because you just don't want another notification. You don't want another text bell going off. But I do think that it is important to be able to sign up for these. And like you said, even though you're not tech savvy, you kind of have like this go to resource. So I think that's important. So thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
And
There are some
mhm.
additional things people can be doing beyond just the apps. We found that 3 out of every 5 people that responded to the survey don't have documents backed up digitally, and that's something that, regardless of what kinds of technology resources you may be using, you can take those documents, take pictures of your vital documents around your birth certificate or your
Mhm.
driver's license or your health information, and upload that on your phone so that it's available in case of an emergency, whether there's a fire or a flood that may have damaged the documents, or that you're able to access them off-site if you have to leave your home.
Yeah, of course. And so, we just spoke a little bit about what are some of the first steps and some of the key elements to take, but specifically with increasing prevalence in extreme weather events, which unfortunately we're seeing right now in Florida with a hurricane. Can you tell us a little bit and walk us through the key steps of creating an effective evacuation plan for older adults?
Sure. Again, you start with the sites and the checklist because they're very well informed and they can do them by your specific area. So you can look at whether you need a grab bag, whether or not you're more likely to be facing a flood or a heat wave. So it does require a little bit of localization in terms of your use. The second thing to do is look at your make sure you have power where you need it. It's a very critical portion of it. So, for example, 3 out of 5 people responding that older adults don't have portable chargers for their phones. And that's a relatively inexpensive and very easy to use resource so that if you can't plug your phone into the wall because there's no power, you'll still have that backup portable charger. They only cost about $15 or $20. For people that have home requirements for power, that's one of the areas that people really may want to consider, especially if you've got medical devices that use power in your home that are life-saving, such as oxygen machines and things like that. You're going to need to consider a backup generator for the home, which can be something that's as simple as a small gas power generator, or if you've got a more elaborate need, you may have a more elaborate system that your entire house switches to backup power if you need it. So there's certain considerations around power that we think people need to talk through so they can be prepared as well in the case of a disaster.
Absolutely. And now over half of the older adults that were surveyed reported not having vital documents. They didn't save them digitally. And you just spoke a little bit briefly about, that should be one of the key elements that you have in your plan. So in the age of technology, can you just elaborate on how important it is to have digital files of these very important documents?
Absolutely. Those digital files are helpful, even if it's not an emergency. In many cases, you'll be talking to your doctor or talking to a health insurance provider or something, and they'll ask you for information. Many of us have become much more comfortable with having access to our documents in the cloud. So your driver's license, your some tax information, insurance information, as long as you're password protecting your phone and your access to the information, which you should be doing anyways, then those resources will be available to you wherever you are and are much less likely to be damaged or lost. So we do recommend that people back things up. One other area that people have not always considered is prescription medications. So not only having the backup information about what your medications are, your doctor's information and things like that, but you're going to want to be able to actually get some extra medication as well so that you have a little bit of redundancy there in case you're not able to access the pharmacy. So having some extra medications on hand can really make a difference as well.
That was an interesting point about the medication that you brought up. It's funny, that was something that I didn't think about when I read over for this segment. I think of, what you see in TV with the bunkers, the overstock of food and the flashlights and the candles and all that. So really for you to break down everything that you really do need, I think is important. So once again, thank you for clarifying that. And as an expert, can you tell me a little bit about how we can encourage and motivate older adults to take proactive steps in disaster preparedness, especially when chronic health conditions and reduced mobility make them more vulnerable, especially in extreme weather?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think really help. Now you're just starting to talk a little bit about the motivation factor, right? And many people, when you say, mom or dad or grandma, I want to help you, I want you to get signed up for this disaster preparedness, they'll push you away and say, let's do it tomorrow. So you need to get people to understand the urgency. First of all, nobody wants to be a burden. And you want to make sure people know that if something happens, they should be protected so that we're not worrying about them and we're able to get access to information to know that they're safe. And so many of these resources online allow you to communicate whether or not, if you need help, communicate that you are safe. You can do that through many social media platforms. And also, even if the power and the phone goes out, many of these more recent iPhones and different systems allow you to call for help with satellite service. So you're really becoming less of a worry for your family members and neighbors and friends because you can mark yourself safe or ask for help if you need it. In addition to that, many people are urgently connected to their pets. And I can tell you, in my family, I have people that would not take care of themselves and would not set up a plan except they know they need it for their dog or their cat. And so setting up your pet with a GPS tracker and making sure that you've got systems in place in case of a disaster so that you're not separated from your beloved pets or family members is really part of the motivation that people can have to take care of these things ahead of time. And then finally, just getting people to visualize what it's going to be like if the power goes down, if you've got water on the floor, if there's a fire in your community, and you are then trying to solve the problem. Imagine how difficult it is to solve something like this once the disaster has already started. It's almost impossible to get these systems set up. So we need to do it today because it's just impossible in the future. When you need it, it's too late.
Absolutely. And to wrap up, can you just tell me what message would you like to convey for older adults and their families about the importance of preparedness and the steps they take to ensure the safety and well-being during emergencies?
Sure. The reality with the disaster preparedness in older people is the good news is we're living longer, and so we are more independent, and we are needing to plan for a long life in our communities, and we need to set up the systems to make sure that we're safe. So the first part of this is to say, let's do a plan today. We've put all the resources on one page for you and made it super easy for people to access and get ready. So if you go to aarp.org/disaster prep, all of those resources have been set up with access so that you can find the links to them. You don't have to go searching around the internet, and they're trustworthy and they're non-commercial. They're free of charge, so you can get set up without spending money right now.
Tom, thank you so much for this informative conversation.
Thank you for having us today. It's really important. I'm glad you're taking the time to cover it.
Absolutely. For more information, you can visit their website at aarp.org/disaster prep. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open right after this.